Well, I'm so excited for our next guest.
With a Northeast Kingdom accent.
Oh, yes, of course. Our WCAX anchor and award-winning journalist, Darren Perron.
How are you, ladies?
Lovely. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. I love the show.
I outed you as a Northeast Kingdomer.
Proud of it. So
Barton,
help me
correct?
out. Yes, you got it.
Yeah, I'm up on my Darren Perron trivia.
Well, grew up in Glover and then moved to the big city of Barton.
I was going to say, what's the difference? Coventry, I mean, it's all really, it's just a melding. Orleans County, right?
Correct.
Just throw it,
like tossing
I'm just
geography out there.
swishing my
Vermont Geography 101. Let's get the map up here and just start pointing it all out.
No big deal. Anyway.
So you are a true Vermonter.
Yeah. Grew up there. I have 50 first cousins up in the Northeast Kingdom. Wow. Huge family. A lot of them still up there, actually. So deep roots.
Did you get your start at the Barton Chronicle or whatever? Is that what it's called?
I did.
You did? Honestly?
Yeah, no joke. I really did. Yeah.
That really wasn't part of my Darren Perron trivia.
No, it's
but
true.
That's great.
Yeah, I was like, fresh out of college and had been interning down at WCAX and needed some cash dollars because I was just graduating. Went home, moved in with the rents again because I couldn't afford to get my own place, and went down to the Chronicle. They had a part-time gig open, and yeah, they let me cover the Coventry Select Board meeting just to test me out. And
but those were exciting meetings. A lot of hot business in Coventry.
Frankly, it was fascinating to me, and this is why I ended up getting a full-time gig, is because they then sicked me on the Barton Select Board, and all of the boring municipalities issues were happening when every other reporter was there, but I was like, all right, well, something has to happen after everybody leaves, and then there ended up being this huge brawl at the select board meeting. It was just the select board and me, and so I had this front page story. The next day they were like, do you want a full-time job? And I'm like, yep, that's why I stayed late.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it worked out all right.
Cut your teeth.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I really like that story. I didn't know, but
all
not a
about
lot of people
timing.
know about that.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So what got you interested in journalism to begin with?
It was really interesting because when I was a kid, I remember liking the news more than I liked cartoons. And if I was a really good boy, by the end of the week, I could spend the night at my grandparents' house. So every Saturday night I would spend the night there if I was good. And my grandfather was a total news junkie. And so every Sunday morning, I'd get up early with him. I loved him. He was my favorite. And I would just watch him soaking up the information that he was getting from the CBS morning show on Sundays. And I was just like, oh, this is good stuff. So I was like, all right, I want to do this. I want to be a storyteller. So I knew really early on that this is what I wanted to do.
So you went to school for journalism?
Yep, went to Castleton. I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted to do print or TV. Really, I love writing. That's my first passion. And so I knew I wanted to be a journalist in some way, but I didn't know if it was going to be TV or print. So I did, dabbled in all of it, and went to the paper, really fell in love with being able to write as much as you wanted. In the Barton Chronicle, they didn't tell you how much to write.
We have plenty of space.
Right, exactly. So, I cut my teeth there, learned from some of the best in the business, and about a year after I was there, I got a call from Marcellus Parsons, who was my predecessor, and he was like, will you come work full-time for us? And honestly, it was a tough decision for me because I really loved writing. And so I went to the publisher of the paper. I was young, I was 21. So I was like, this is the opportunity that's been presented to me, but I don't know what to do. I love working with you guys. I've learned so much, and I was still learning a lot, and still am, frankly. And they said, listen, you're 21 years old. This opportunity is not going to come along again. Excuse me, you have to jump at this. And they were kind enough to say, if you don't like it, we'll hire you back. So it was a no-brainer for me.
You weren't out anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Was Marcellus a big inspiration to you?
For sure.
Yeah, right?
I grew up watching
same.
him.
So that's why I was like, oh, I wonder.
Yeah, absolutely. And he gave me my first job, first opportunity as an intern there, and and he was the consummate newsman. Like, he liked a good news story. It wasn't about being sensational or anything like that. You just had to have both sides, be accurate. He was a stickler for grammar. So yeah, he was awesome.
So at the core of being the face behind the news stories is something that you've written and composed and investigated.
Yeah, generally speaking. So anytime you actually hear a reporter's voice on the air, it's something that they've gone out and, dug up, covered, or whatever. Myself and my co-anchor, Kristen, then review those scripts just to, make sure we're not going to get sued, and we have both sides in the story. So we act as more editors in that regard. But anything that we're reading on the air, it's either myself, she, Paul, Christine, or Kat have all written those stories. So all day long, it's basically managing crews and writing stuff for the show.
Yeah, it's a lot more work than just that 60 minutes of television.
It's 8 hours of work for every 1 minute of news that you see.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a statistic.
Yeah, because you think you have to drive to the story, you've got to set it up, you've got to write it, you've got to edit it, and then go present it on the air. So it's a lot of behind the scenes. The glory is just that 60 minutes.
The 60 seconds like we get to see.
Yeah.
And you've covered so much during your time as a journalist.
Yeah.
Including, you did a 2-week stay out in Afghanistan, correct?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It's so funny. I was just coming back from a barbecue, and I was chatting with a soldier who happened to be there. Frightening, fascinating, educational, emotional, all of the above. It was pretty terrifying. I mean, we did whatever the Vermont Guard troops were doing, and we busted it out because, we were only there for 2 weeks, so we wanted to see as much as possible.
Right.
So if they were headed out on a convoy, we were headed on a convoy. If they were doing a chopper run, we were doing that. If they were doing foot patrols through villages where, they'd never had any contact with American soldiers before. In some villages where we went, they thought it was the Russians that were still occupying the country because they're so cut off. It's a very divided country, both geographically and politically. So in one town, they were like, yeah, U.S. troops. And then in other towns, it was, pretty scary and, bombs. And there was one convoy we were on. It was 4 vehicles ahead of us, a coalition forces. So it was a Macedonia tank, but hit a roadside bomb. And, we heard shelling and bombings. And I was like, what am I doing here? Why did I sign up for this? But, I came back with an incredible appreciation for our military, because they were told to go and are stuck there, and it was an incredible experience. But I certainly would not want to go back.
Did WCAX foot that? Is that was all? That was their idea. They said. Well, is that abnormal for a small
It was very expensive.
A little station, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Because I thought it was when they sent I think Alex Apple out to Iowa, not that Iowa's Afghanistan by any means.
Although politics these days probably sort of feel like it.
When they sent him out to, I think they did, right, to cover Bernie. I thought that was wow, they're sending him. I wasn't aware that you had gone to Afghanistan, so that I'm like, wow, they're really doing some stuff here.
Yeah, it was. We knew that it was going to be the largest call-up since World War II of Vermont Guard soldiers. So I chatted with one of our photographers who ended up, the two of us went together. Lance McKenzie is fantastic. He's so talented. But he's also a medic. So I was like, that could come in handy. God forbid, something bad happened. And we went to the owners of the station and said, I kind of feel like it's our duty to go bring these stories back to Vermonters. Everybody's going to be wondering what's happening with our men and women who are over there. And the only real way for us to see is for us to go, because we couldn't rely on CBS or CNN, because that was only going to be if it blew up and whatever, we'd get the news of that. So we wanted to see day to day what happened over there. And we had incredible access because, it was really cool because we'd pull into a camp. Some of these were bombed out police stations and whatever, but they would see either they'd recognize me just because I'm on TV, or they would see the WCAX flag on the camera, and they were there was just a glimmer of home for them. So they were like, come with us, we'll show you, we'll take you out here. But there were some really terrifying missions, and you understand why some of these folks are coming back with, PTSD and other invisible wounds, for sure.
Sounds like a learning experience for sure. But it sounds like a sense of community was there, especially just with like the WCAX flag, bringing that like sense of home out in Afghanistan. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a really cool experience, and it was a real privilege. But again, I don't think I'd want to do it again because I was pretty terrified the whole time, for sure.
But you've had a lot of great opportunities at WCAX, so you had the series Becoming.
Yeah.
And can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, it was, quite a few years ago now, but it was really when trans issues were coming to light and people were hearing the word transgender, but they didn't necessarily know. And frankly, even being a member of the community, I didn't know a lot about it. So I was like, all right, well, let's see if I can earn someone's trust to share their story, because it takes a lot of bravery for somebody to come out that way, especially on statewide television. So I went to a party hooked up with this woman, her name, the Wig Goddess, on the Barry Montpelier Road, or Route 2, I guess.
We need to,
Who is the Wig
Goddess?
She's amazing. Her name is Claire. She's awesome. And so I called her up, and I knew that she did a lot of makeovers for trans people, and I said, I'd like to explore this. I don't really know how I go about, I want to make sure that they know that I don't want this to be sensational. I just want to explain to people what it means to be trans. And she said, well, listen, I'm having a party, and it's going to be wall-to-wall, male to female trans women, and if you want, come. And I said, well, I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable. So put it out there that we'd be coming, no cameras, just to meet and hung out, had a blast, learned so much from these people and their internal struggle, and finally owning and being their authentic selves. And I learned a ton from it and met some cool people who were really willing to let me tell their story. And so I did that, and that was a long time ago. And frankly, we've come so far even from that series, because I look back at even some of the words that I was using as a journalist then, which I wouldn't use today. So so then I fast forward 10 years, and I recently did something on Christine Hallquist, who is the first statewide, or frankly in the country, to come out as trans, CEO of a utility, which is really a male-dominated industry.
Right.
And so just looking at how I told those two stories from the 10 years that were in between, we've come so far. It's amazing.
Speaking of that story, you actually provided us a clip of that today. Yeah. So why don't we roll into that so our viewers can watch as well?
All right, cool.
What would you do if you felt you were born in the wrong body? Most transgender Vermonters keep their identity hidden for a lifetime.
For a high-profile CEO in Vermont, the secret nearly killed him. He thought about suicide, worried revealing his true self would cost him his job, his marriage, his family. But living in the shadows became too much to bear. So tonight, he is sharing his story exclusively with Channel 3 News of going from he to she.
We certainly love having
He came bearing bad news to a town set for solar.
We have to abandon the project.
South Hero pledged support for a 15-acre, 1.5 megawatt solar project. But now Vermont Electric Cooperative can't do it. A wetland at the site raised environmental concerns.
We support community-based solar siting.
The utility's CEO, Dave Hallquist, pitched another plan, a bigger 50-acre project in a different location. VEC would partner with a big developer.
There are large solar developers who do a good job, who can afford to take that kind of risk.
Hallquist known for striking deals.
And it would cost our members more money.
A smart businessman at the forefront of innovative energy projects.
We have very advanced technology.
A respected leader.
The benefits of net metering.
Pitching in when the lights go out.
We prioritized our outages.
The town moderator in Hyde Park. And now he wants to be known.
Christine Hallquist is
as someone else.
Who I really am.
Dave Hallquist is transgender. Basically, born with a male body and a female mind.
I would never want to go to my grave knowing that I didn't tell the world about this.
Hallquist says the need to finally live the truth stems from a dark place, a place of suffering. He was bullied and beaten as a child by classmates, by nuns, who he says demanded an exorcism on the 8th grader because he was different than the other boys.
I learned early on that it would not be acceptable to be Christine.
To survive, he toughened up, started playing sports, and hid what was happening in his head.
I learned to play the role very well. I've been playing it ever since.
It worked. He fooled everyone in high school and college, and then met Pat, the love of his life. The pair married 2 years later, though Hallquist kept the painful secret.
She's been amazingly supportive, but I'm not the person she married.
Several years after the wedding, Pat discovered Hallquist's hidden wardrobe of women's clothing. She was confused, confronted Hallquist, and considered leaving, but eventually chalked it up to a phase or a fetish, like cross-dressing just for fun, hoping it would pass. She stayed so long as no one else knew.
We were going to keep this secret to our grave.
She allowed Dave to dress as Christine in private. Hallquist usually did so while playing the piano, alone. Pat didn't want to see it. Then came 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy.
It's incredibly painful not to be your authentic self.
I don't believe at all that transgender men and women have mental illness as a result of being transgender.
Rachel Inker is a medical doctor running the transgender care clinic at Burlington's Community Health Center. 300 trans patients have come here over the last 10 years, people in their late teens to senior citizens.
People will often talk about years, often from childhood, of feeling that they are not in the body that they were intended to, that people don't see who they are. And it can be a very difficult process for people, filled with lots of loss, rejection, harassment.
Counting the transgender population is challenging. The U.S. Census Bureau doesn't ask if someone is trans, and the number is not tracked by the CDC, and not everyone is out. But experts working with the trans community here in Vermont estimate the number to be around 1,400. That means for every 440 people you pass on the street, one identifies as transgender.
You know, there's so much shame. There's so much lifetime of shame, lifetime of embarrassment, lifetime of trying.
After years of hiding and periodic purging, tossing out his women's clothes, Hallquist couldn't live like that any longer.
You try and you try and you try, and at some point you realize, I can't fight this.
About 5 years ago, he told his kids.
You know, at first there's obvious personal shock.
This is a person that we're all around for the past 30 years of my life, and your 30s of your life, who's completely changing into a different person, and that's hard. And recognizing that it's hard, but then we keep coming back to the fact that we love each other.
The family stuck together, and Hallquist's son, Derek, is documenting his father's transformation. But they all admit it's been tough, and still is, especially now that Hallquist's transition is further along. He's taking estrogen and testosterone blockers. He's changing. And going public with his new identity. On this night, a first outing for Christine with a group of trans women she met through the advocacy group Pride Center of Vermont. A new outfit for the occasion. Makeup, hair, jewelry, and a bit of fashion advice from Pat. She's working to make peace with what's happening and still support the person she's loved for so long.
Thank you.
No nerves, just excitement for Christine during the hour-long ride from her Hyde Park home to Splash on the Burlington waterfront.
I feel happy.
Quickly, Christine found new friendships.
About 40 people confirmed they're going to walk with me.
Drinks turned to dinner, and an invite for 2 of Christine's kids to join.
In fact, I prefer now being out and hanging out with Christine because I can tell she's happy.
But their hearts go out to their mom, Pat, back at home, who's struggling with the public revelation.
We all agreed we're super worried about Mom.
The whole family is in group therapy, The marriage, though, in question.
Yeah, I know Johnson very well, of course.
We're very lucky in that we've had each other in this.
What's your biggest fear in coming out publicly?
My biggest fear now is for my wife and family, and how they continue, how they adjust. When you've loved and lived with somebody for 35 plus years, forgive me, I think I'm going to start to cry. I love my wife dearly. And it's not a love. I don't need to hang on to her. I just know that this of course it's a struggle for spouses of transgender folks.
Deciding to transition takes an enormous amount of courage. It is not something that people do impulsively. It's often many years of struggling with gender dysphoria, a discomfort or depression resulting from a body that doesn't feel like is their own.
Now I've allowed myself to be who I am.
Hormone therapy, surgeries to look more feminine, or complete sexual reassignment surgery are options during transition.
Will I ever go all the way? I don't know.
Christine's not sure how far into her transition she'll go.
My brain believes I'm a woman. I'm a woman. And I know that's really hard when you stare at somebody like myself who has all the physical body parts of a man. You'd say, how can you be a woman? Get that out of your head. That's what a lot of people say, get over it. Well, sorry, I can't. Yeah, that's who I am. I can't get over this.
At 59 years old, that once scared little boy is becoming the woman she hoped and prayed to be.
Now that it's no longer a secret, it's just incredibly peaceful.
So will we see Dave Hallquist in a suit and tie again?
Unfortunately, yes. That's my costume. Do I see someday walking into the legislature as a woman? Maybe. I'd love to see that day.
Hallquist has now informed her board of directors at Vermont Electric Co-op and her employees, and it's gone well. She no longer worries about losing her job. However, she is concerned about some national utility boards she sits on and whether she'll be squeezed out because she's transgender. Hallquist will send out a statewide press release tomorrow about her transition, and on Sunday will take part in Burlington's Pride celebration as Christine.
So courageous.
Yeah.
It was a great story.
Thank you very much.
It's so nice to see Christine's story told on local media like that. It's one of those things where those types of stories don't always get covered by television in general, or media. So it's nice that WCAX had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I was, it was so weird too, because I had heard that, I'd heard about Christine, and I knew Christine as Dave Hallquist because, I'd been covering the utility for a number of years, but I had heard, there was some rumor mill going around that, that she's trans, and so she was on my call list that day. It's so strange. On my call list to say, I'd love to tell your story. I will treat it with sincerity and, an honest, open mind, and I think we all can learn from you. And so on my call list that day, and then I get a phone call saying, this is Dave Hallquist at the time, I'd like to talk to you. And so I was like, well, this is so weird.
Wow.
And so I reached out, I did my pitch right away, and she was like, I wanted you to tell my story, so let's start meeting. And so we just met for coffee, got to know each other on a personal level, because all before it was if there was storm damage or some crap like that, it was
Right.
Always those kind of scenarios. And met her family, incredible family, very brave, very tough thing for all of them to go through, of course. But we're really open to having me do it, and it was a total honor for sure.
So an extended feature like that, which has like a longer runtime, would you say that took multiple, like how long does it take you to piece a story like that together?
It took a long time.
Weeks and weeks?
Oh yeah, probably months.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like over 9 minutes, which is unheard of in local TV news. So the station was super cool about, doing it right. They, gave me a ton of resources and time to be able to put it together. And I was proud of it. It's probably one of the my most proud moments as a journalist was being able to tell her story.
And you were nominated for a GLAAD award for that segment, am I correct?
That one was for, excuse me, the Becoming. I won an NLGJA award for the Christine Hallquist story, though. Awesome. Yeah, it was so cool. I was like hanging out with Mo Rocca and all of these, CBS reporters. It was really cool. It was fun. And it was a conference full of gays, so it was a good time too.
So, I mean, the gays know how to party.
Yeah,
we all know that.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it seems like a community-oriented story. Like you said, we all are in this community together. We're the full rainbow.
Yes.
Yeah, brought that in. So
and you look fabulous.
Well, thank you. And we can understand why Christine would reach out to you to tell that story.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for covering that.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Yeah. The You Can Quote Me segments.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that? So,
well, it's kind of like this format.
Is it?
It's like sitting around having coffee and tackling an issue.
So would guests come to the studios?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we flip this around sometime.
Perfect.
So that's still running. You're still doing that.
Yep.
Awesome.
Sunday mornings at 7:30 is when it airs. I usually record it on Friday afternoons because who wants to come in at 7:30 on Sunday morning?
Right.
That TV magic, it's amazing.
Right.
Well, I was watching last week, and you were discussing LGBT healthcare for youth in the state.
Yeah, fascinating doctor. I mean, he's really he's a new doctor. He just became a doctor, and he's starting his residency at UVM Medical Center in the pediatrics department. And he's gay. He grew up with his doctor saying things to him like, so do you have a girlfriend? You must have a pretty girlfriend and things like that. And he was like, I never really felt comfortable sharing anything with him because he automatically went there and, he said, and I think it's a huge detriment to any kids who have healthcare needs, but they're afraid because they're not either out to their families or what have it, or maybe even themselves yet. And so he was like, he wants to put his focus as a new doctor into teaching other doctors that if you have a kid that you think even might be, it has to be a different approach. And it's fascinating and the response he says, obviously, we're in Vermont though, it's a pretty progressive state, right. But that other doctors are really receptive to learning more because, some of these men and women went to school 20, 30 years ago when it wasn't even on their, conscience that that someone could be gay or identify, as whatever. And so he thinks there's a real need and, frankly, I do too.
Right, and UVM Medical Center is right on the cutting edge, having the trans department for youth specifically. So that's
super
really
cool.
awesome that you were able to talk about that.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. He was really fascinating. I mean, young, go-getter doctor, and I think he's going to do great things.
Well, it makes sense, like what you were saying about things just from your Becoming series to doing Christine. The terminology that you used 10 years ago has evolved. So things are constantly evolving, and I think that's important for people in the medical industry to continue, and frankly, a lot of industries, to continue to go back and get education on certain things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's all part of it.
And I think frankly, I feel this way, and I'm not sure if you ladies do, but like that we're always learning.
Right.
It's a big community we have. It's an alphabet soup of people in our community. So I think we all can learn from each other, and I feel like I'm always learning something new, and I love that. So.
So what's new? What's coming down the pipeline for you at WCAX? Any hot stories? Any big features you're working on? Or?
I'm working on, and we were chatting just before the show.
We were?
I'm working on this series now, Getting Away with Murder, and it's taking a look at some of the old cold cases in Vermont, and there are so many, and some date back to the 30s and 40s, and really difficult ones to solve.
Like disappearances, right?
Yeah,
like
disappearances and homicides that are going to be a real challenge being a real challenge for investigators, because the killer's probably dead. All of the witnesses, if you're looking back at some of these in the 30s and 40s, all the witnesses are gone. But those cold cases fascinate me.
Yeah, because what if you uncover? What if you figure it out?
It'd be so cool.
Then you'll definitely win more awards.
And this is not to be confused with the Shonda Rhimes How to Get Away with Murder.
Correct.
Which I am also addicted to, so I'm sure.
So am I.
But I'm sure you'd be open if Shonda hit you up and said, hey, I want to be on my show.
Make the call now. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you guys. Really
we had
appreciate it.
such a great time.